Lieutenant Ethan Darnell stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring out at the vastness of space. His ship, the Intrepid, drifted silently through the black void, the stars shining brightly like distant beacons. This mission was unlike any he had been assigned to before. They had come to the edge of the known galaxy, to a planet no one dared to approach. The rumors surrounding the planet Foreth were dark, of strange, dangerous beings who were not to be trifled with. The locals from the nearby systems called them the Azthura, an ancient species said to be as beautiful as they were deadly. Ethan's orders were clear. Make contact with the Azthura. Try to establish some form of diplomacy and gather intelligence. Yet for months, every attempt to even land on the planet had failed. The Azthura were known for their powerful psychic abilities and incredible strength. It was said that their beauty alone could overwhelm anyone who dared approach them. No one had made successful contact, and most who had tried were never heard from again. Most of the crew, including his superior officers, were hesitant, fearful of the unknown. They saw the Azthura as a threat, something to avoid, something best left alone. But Ethan was different. He had always been the one to take risks. Curiosity and a sense of adventure burned inside him. He had been raised to believe that true discovery came from exploring the unknown, not running from it. "What's it like, Captain?" his co-pilot, Sergeant Miles, asked as he entered the observation deck. "Everyone's talking about this mission. They're all saying it's a one-way trip." Ethan turned to face him, a determined look on his face. "Some say that, but we've been given a chance to make history. We're going to be the ones to break the barrier. We won't run. We'll make contact." Miles frowned, clearly uneasy. "And if we can't, what then?" "We adapt. We learn. We try again," Ethan replied, his voice unwavering. The first step was always the hardest. The Intrepid moved closer to the planet's surface, the frozen landscape of Foreth stretching below them, a stark contrast to the dark sky above. Ethan's heart beat a little faster as the ship began its descent. The cold, inhospitable world below was home to the Azthura, a species that, according to every piece of intelligence gathered, had no interest in interacting with outsiders. As the Intrepid cut through the atmosphere, turbulence rattled the ship. Ethan gripped the armrest of his seat. The Azthura didn't want visitors, and they made that known by creating powerful electromagnetic fields that caused disruptions. They had fought off countless explorers before him, but Ethan wasn't like the others. He believed that understanding, not fear, would break the silence. When the ship finally landed, the air was thick with tension. The surface of Foreth was cold, frigid even, but the thrill of exploration kept Ethan warm. He had no idea what awaited them outside, but one thing was certain. He would be the first to make contact, and he wasn't going to let fear stop him. "Let's go," Ethan said, standing up from his seat, his eyes set with a determined fire. He was ready for whatever the Azthura had in store. The airlock hissed as it opened, and the cold, biting wind of Foreth rushed in. Ethan stepped out, the crunch of his boots against the icy ground the only sound in the silence. His breath fogged in front of him, but he didn't let the cold bother him. The planet's surface was as harsh as the legends had described, barren and white, as far as the eye could see. It seemed uninhabitable, the kind of place no one should survive. But somewhere on this frozen world, the Azthura lived, the unknown species that had kept their distance from everyone. Even the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had failed to make contact. Yet here he was, alone on the surface of Foreth, with nothing but his courage and his training to guide him. Ethan's team followed him out, their movements cautious. He could see the uncertainty in their eyes, the doubt that lingered. They had been given an order, but they weren't prepared for the reality of it. It was different when you were face to face with the unknown. "Captain," Sergeant Miles said, his voice low, "are you sure about this? We don't even know where they are. No signs of life. No contact. They could be watching us right now." "I know," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "But that's why we're here. to change that, to take the first step. He motioned for the team to follow, and they began to walk through the snow-covered plains. The sky above was a dull grayish hue, casting an eerie, otherworldly light on the landscape. There was no sign of movement, no hint of the Ezthera, yet Ethan felt the weight of their presence, an unseen force that lingered in the air. As they ventured further into the heart of the planet, the ground beneath them began to shift. The snow was thick, but there was something beneath it, something strange, almost unnatural. Ethan knelt down and brushed away the snow, revealing an intricate design etched into the surface of the planet itself. It was almost like a symbol, one that didn't belong to any known species. "This wasn't made by nature," Ethan murmured to himself. "This is Azathoran." "Do you think they're near?" Miles asked, eyeing the strange markings warily. Ethan stood, scanning the horizon. "I don't know, but this is a sign. They've been here, and they might still be watching us. We just need to be ready." Suddenly, a deep rumbling shook the ground beneath them. The team staggered, and the wind picked up violently, swirling around them. Ethan's heart raced as the sound of an approaching force grew louder, like the thunder of a storm. "We're not alone," Ethan said, his voice tight with excitement and caution. The Azthera were here, and they were about to make their presence known. Without warning, something massive emerged from the snow ahead of them. A figure, tall and powerful, stepped forward. An alien unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. It was a woman, or something that resembled one, standing at least 8 feet tall. Her body shimmered with an ethereal glow, her violet skin radiant against the backdrop of the frozen planet. The delicate wings that extended from her back fluttered slightly, giving her an almost otherworldly grace. Her gaze was intense, yet there was an underlying power in it that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. He had never seen anything like her, the beauty and strength combined in a single form, more imposing than he could have imagined. The Ezthera princess. Ethan stood still, heart pounding, his eyes meeting hers. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. But it was clear from her posture and the way she moved that she was no ordinary being. She wasn't just another species, she was a force to be reckoned with. "Welcome, human," her voice echoed, not just in his ears, but in his mind, a deep, resonant tone. "You are the first to come to us. But why? Why do you seek us?" Ethan swallowed hard, knowing that his next words could decide everything. "I come in peace. I want to learn. I want to understand." Her eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. The silence that followed was thick, like the entire planet was holding its breath. The Azthera princess stood before Ethan, her glowing violet eyes fixed on him. Her presence was overwhelming, the air around her charged with power. The snow around them seemed to grow colder, the wind howling in response to her unspoken command. Despite the freezing cold, Ethan felt an intense heat in his chest as the alien woman's gaze bore into him. He stood tall, but he couldn't help the flutter in his chest. She was magnificent, powerful, and at the same time, intimidating beyond words. The silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of her scrutiny. For a moment, Ethan doubted himself. What was he doing here? He had come for answers, but this wasn't what he had imagined. This alien being was nothing like the species he had encountered before. There was something ancient and wild in her eyes, something that told him this wasn't just a simple mission. Finally, the Ezthera princess spoke again, her voice carrying in his mind. "You seek us out in the coldest corners of the galaxy, human. But why? Do you seek knowledge, or are you here to challenge us?" Ethan could hear the weight behind her words. The Azthera had long been a myth, their power and beauty spoken of in hushed tones, but no one had dared to come to their planet and live to tell the tale. The fact that he was standing here now, facing this powerful being, was a miracle in itself. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "I came because I believe there's more to learn from each other. You've been isolated, but I think I think, the princess interrupted, her voice still soft, but with a tinge of amusement. You think you know what we are, what we want. But humans, you are so quick to assume. Ethan swallowed, but his voice remained steady. I didn't come to assume anything. I came to understand. To show you that not all humans are the same. We don't all see you as a threat. I believe we can share knowledge, peace, maybe even trade. The princess regarded him silently for a long moment. Her wings fluttered gently, almost as if in contemplation. Ethan couldn't help but admire their iridescent glow, the way they shimmered with each movement. Everything about her was magnificent. Her height, her beauty, her power. And yet, she stood there, completely still, like a towering force of nature. Then she stepped forward, her long legs carrying her with a grace that was both alien and mesmerizing. You speak of peace, but what do you know of peace, human? Her voice softened, but the power behind it was undeniable. My people have known nothing but battle, nothing but survival. We were once a great empire, but now we are a scattered, fractured race. Ethan's heart clenched at her words. I understand. I don't claim to know your struggles, but I want to help. I want to offer you something different. The princess studied him for a long moment, and for the first time, Ethan noticed a flicker of something in her eyes, something softer, almost like curiosity. It was fleeting, but it was there. You are brave, she finally said, but bravery alone does not grant understanding. Ethan nodded, sensing that she was starting to soften, just a little. I know, but I'm willing to listen, if you'll let me. The princess stared at him for a moment longer before turning her gaze toward the vast horizon. The wind howled around them, but there was a strange calm in the way she moved. She was still a mystery, still someone who seemed beyond his reach, but there was a glimmer of something else. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to change the course of things. Very well, human, she said, her voice strong yet not as harsh. You have my attention. Let us see if your words are true. And with that, the world around Ethan seemed to change. The tension in the air shifted, as if the planet itself was taking a breath, waiting for what would come next. The princess, Lizara, as she had introduced herself, led Ethan deeper into the heart of the frozen wasteland. Her movements were graceful, despite the biting cold. She had not told him much about herself yet, but there was a quiet strength in the way she carried herself. Ethan followed closely, trying to match her pace. They came upon a large structure, hidden beneath layers of snow and ice. It was an ancient building, almost like a temple, with towering spires and intricate carvings that seemed to glow faintly in the twilight. Lysara placed her hand on one of the stone walls, and the door slid open, revealing a vast hall filled with alien technology and ancient artifacts. This is where my people once thrived, Lizara said, her voice filled with a strange sadness. Now it is but a shadow of what it once was. Ethan took in his surroundings, his eyes wide with awe. The room was filled with glowing crystals, intricate machinery, and strange relics. Some of the technology seemed far beyond anything humans had developed, yet it was all abandoned. Dust lay thick on the ground, untouched by time. Why did you leave all this behind? Ethan asked, his voice full of curiosity. This place, it's incredible. Lizara paused, her gaze distant. We were betrayed. My people became too powerful, too isolated. We trusted others, and they turned on us. Our empire fell, and now we are scattered. We no longer have the strength to rebuild. Ethan could hear the pain in her voice. She had lost much, and her people had suffered. He could understand her desire to protect what was left, to hold on to the past, but he also saw the weight of regret in her eyes. I understand, Ethan said softly, but there's still time. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to stay in the past. Lizora looked at him, her piercing violet eyes locking onto his. You think I'm still clinging to the past? She asked, a challenge in her voice. You think I'm weak for trying to preserve what's left of my people. No, Ethan quickly said. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you don't have to carry this burden alone. The universe is vast, and there are others who can help. Lizara's expression softened, and for a moment, Ethan thought he saw something more in her eyes, something like hope. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a guarded wariness. You speak as though I can trust you, Lizara said. But trust is not something I give easily. Ethan nodded, understanding. I don't expect you to trust me right away. I'm not asking for that. But I am asking for a chance. Let me help. Let me show you that not all humans are like those who hurt your people. There was a long silence between them. Lizara turned away, looking out at the distant horizon. The wind howled outside, but here, in this forgotten place, the temperature seemed almost bearable. Finally, Lizara spoke, her voice soft but resolute. I will allow you to prove your words. But know this, human. If you fail, I will not hesitate to end you. My people have seen enough betrayal. Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. I understand, and I won't fail you. For the first time since meeting her, Lizara gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. It wasn't much, but to Ethan, it was a sign that she was beginning to believe in the possibility of something different. As they stood there, alone in the ruins of her people's once great empire, Ethan felt a new sense of purpose. He hadn't come here just to make contact with an alien species. He had come to help rebuild, to heal the wounds of the past. And no matter what it took, he wouldn't back down from that promise. Days passed as Ethan and Lizara continued to work together in the ruins of her people's temple. The vast hall, once a symbol of Aztheran strength and power, now stood silent, its chambers filled with dust and echoes of a forgotten time. Despite the overwhelming sadness that lingered in the air, there was a quiet energy between them, a bond forming, built on shared purpose and respect. Ethan had been spending his days repairing some of the old technology. Lizara had shown him how to work with the crystals, guiding him through the ancient processes her people once used. Though she was reserved and kept her emotions close, Ethan could feel her eyes on him, watching as he carefully handled the fragile, glowing components. There was a faint trust beginning to form, an understanding that hadn't existed before. One evening, as they worked side by side, Lizara spoke again, breaking the silence. You've done more than I expected. I thought you humans were all brash and reckless. But you are different. Ethan paused, looking up at her. I'm not like most humans, I guess, but I don't think we're all that different from your people. We've had our struggles, our wars, our moments of failure. But we keep going. We adapt. Lizara's violet eyes studied him intently, her gaze thoughtful. And what makes you think that I, or my people, can adapt? We are broken, scattered, and weak. Ethan shook his head, standing up. I don't believe that. I believe your people have strength, and that strength is still here. It's in you, Lizara. Her expression softened for a moment, and for the first time, she looked away, as if the words had touched something deep within her. She had spent so long hiding behind her pride, her warrior heritage, that she hadn't allowed herself to believe there was a future. Yet there was a flicker of something in her, the hope that Ethan's words might hold some truth. You are kind to say that, she replied quietly. But what do you know of my people's history, of our losses? I don't know much, Ethan admitted, but I want to learn. I want to understand. She studied him for a long moment, her wings fluttering gently behind her. My people were once an empire. We ruled many worlds, brought peace to countless systems. But greed and power corrupted us, and we became a target. Our enemies destroyed us from within. I'm sorry, Ethan said softly, sensing the weight of her past. He knew her people had been through unimaginable losses, but this was more than just history. This was a scar that had shaped her, and it was still fresh. Lizara looked out the window, her gaze distant. We were betrayed by those we trusted. I was one of the last of my kind, and I thought I would die alone on this planet, buried under the weight of our history. But then you came." Her words lingered in the air, and Ethan could see that there was more she wasn't saying. She was starting to open up, but there was still a part of her that was holding back, afraid to trust. "We don't have to carry our past alone," Ethan said gently. "I may not know your people's history, but I know we can rebuild together. I've seen what your people are capable of." Lizara turned to face him, her eyes meeting his once more. This time, there was something more in her gaze, something like acceptance, like she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. "Perhaps you are right," she said, her voice steady. "Perhaps there is hope." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. They weren't there yet, but they were starting to see a path. And that, in itself, was a victory. The days on Foreth seemed to pass more quickly now. Ethan and Lizara had formed a bond that was stronger than either had expected. As the planet's cold winds howled outside the ruined temple, inside, the warmth between them grew. Lizara had started to open up more, sharing stories of her people and their once great empire. Ethan, in turn, shared his experiences, the struggles of his people and his personal journey as a soldier. They spent hours each day together, working to repair the ancient technology, deciphering old texts, and rebuilding what had been broken. Ethan marveled at how quickly he had adapted to the Aztheran ways, his skills as a mechanic blending with Lizara's knowledge of her people's technology. They made an excellent team, and in the quiet moments between their tasks, there was a newfound respect between them. One afternoon, as they sat together in the heart of the temple, Lizara turned to Ethan with a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Why did you come here, human? Why did you risk everything to save me, someone you didn't even know?" Her voice was quiet but filled with curiosity. Ethan looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. He had asked himself the same thing many times. There was something about Lizara, about her strength and her vulnerability, that had drawn him in from the moment he saw her on the frozen surface. She wasn't just another mission. She had become something more. "I came because I believed in the possibility of change," he said softly. "I saw you, and I saw someone who needed help. I didn't see an enemy. I didn't see a threat. I saw someone who was more than what the legends said. I saw a person who had been through things no one should have to endure." Lizara's eyes softened at his words. There was no sarcasm or mockery in his voice, only honesty. She had grown used to people fearing her, respecting her from a distance, but never truly seeing her. And now, here was a human, offering not just help, but understanding. "Your words mean more to me than you know, Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are the first to look at me without fear, without seeing the power I wield, and just see me." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He didn't have the words to describe how he felt. He had always been taught to be brave, to fight, but in this moment he realized that bravery was more than just physical strength. It was about seeing the humanity, or in this case, the alien humanity, in others. Lizara stood and walked toward the window, her wings unfurling with a grace that took Ethan's breath away. She looked out over the frozen land, her expression distant but thoughtful. "You have helped me see that my people's past does not have to define our future," she said, her voice filled with determination. Ethan joined her at the window, his gaze following hers. He could feel the weight of the decision she was about to make. The Azthera had been isolated for so long, but with Ethan's help, she could rebuild not just her people's technology, but their trust in others. "You're not alone, Lizara," he said, his voice firm. "I'll help you rebuild. Together, we can create something better." She turned to him, her eyes glowing with a new light. "I believe that," she said softly, a smile tugging at her lips. "For the first time, I believe that." The wind outside howled louder, but inside the temple, the warmth between them was undeniable. They weren't just two people from different worlds anymore. They were allies, companions, and perhaps, just perhaps, something more. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a new beginning. The days following their conversation were filled with a new energy. Ethan and Lazara worked side by side, their bond growing stronger with every shared task. There was a quiet understanding between them now, one that didn't need words. The Azetheran technology slowly began to come back to life, its systems humming with power once again. Ethan could feel it. The world was waking up, both inside and outside the temple. Ethan had done more than just repair machinery. He had revived a piece of Lazara's past, a part of her people's history that they had thought lost forever. Every time she looked at him, she saw not just a human, but a partner, a companion who had helped her restore hope, not just for her people, but for herself. One evening, as they stood on the edge of the temple overlooking the distant mountains, Lazara spoke again, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Do you think my people will accept you?" "Accept us?" she asked, her gaze still fixed on the horizon. Ethan thought for a moment before replying. "I can't promise what will happen, but I do know this. Your people deserve to see you as you are. Not just as a princess or a warrior, but as someone who has been through a great deal and is ready to lead them into a new future. And I'll be here, by your side, if you need me." Lazara turned to face him, her expression soft but serious. "You've done more for me than anyone else ever has, Ethan. Not just saving me, but giving me a reason to hope again. I had nearly forgotten what it meant to trust others, to build something meaningful. But now, I know it's possible." Her hand reached out, and Ethan took it, feeling the warmth of her touch. The cold winds of Foreth could howl around them, but inside, there was a quiet warmth that neither of them could deny. They weren't just allies anymore. They were a team, united by a shared purpose and respect. As they stood there, a sudden rumble echoed through the ground. The faint sound of an approaching ship broke the silence. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. It was a Federation cruiser, the same one that had sent them on this mission. They had come to check on them, to see how the mission had gone. Lazara's gaze shifted, a mixture of uncertainty and determination in her eyes. "It's time," she said, her voice low but firm. "I'd spent too long hiding, too long running from what we once were. But I'm ready to face my people now, to rebuild." Ethan nodded. He knew this was a big moment, for both of them. "Then let's go," he said, a quiet confidence in his tone. "Let's show them what we've created." Together, they walked toward the landing pad, where the Federation cruiser waited. As they approached, the crew members aboard the ship looked on, surprised to see the Azthera princess standing tall, no longer a shadow of the past, but a leader ready to move forward. Lazara looked up at Ethan, a gentle smile on her face. "Thank you for believing in me," she said. "I never thought I could trust anyone like this, but you proved me wrong. You proved that hope is never lost." Ethan smiled back, his heart swelling with pride. "You didn't need proving, Lazara. You've always had that strength in you." And as they boarded the ship, their journey had just begun. They would face challenges ahead, no doubt, but Ethan knew one thing for certain. Whatever came their way, they would face it together. Not as an isolated human and a beautiful alien princess, but as partners, equals in the quest for something greater. The future of the Azthera was uncertain, but with hope and determination, it would be theirs to shape.